So we can do our opening prayer. So before anything, ask our benefactors to protect us, to help us to maintain ourselves in serenity during this period, and learn your teachings through beautiful talks and studies that we have the opportunity to do comfortably in our homes. We ask protection and inspiration to Munir Gariba, that will be talking about this so important subject that most of the people has difficulty to understand, as me. So, dear Lord, while we are waiting other people entering the room, we can start this meeting with you be with us, dear Lord. So with your permission, we start this humble study meeting. So be it. Amen. Can I read it quickly, Munir, the CV, so get it to be recorded? Munir Gariba graduated in physics and postgraduated in biomedical engineering, areas in which he has worked professionally for many years. He discovered the Spiritist teachings at the age of 13. He lived in London in the 90s. During this time, he attended Allan Kardec study group, that is Janet Duncan here, family group, and fraternity Spiritist Society. He founded BAS, British Union of Spiritist Societies, together with Anne Sinclair and Denise Ferret. He currently lives in Curitiba, Brazil, and attends CEFA, Center for Spiritist Studies, Francisco de Assis. So, as you know, Adriano is coordinating our studies, and today I take advantage because Munir is my son-in-law. So with the approval of everybody, Munir can talk now. Munir, welcome you. Munir, you can say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation to use your time to talk about this topic, which is rather interesting, especially for me, being a physicist. I always look at things with the the eyes of someone who's been trained in academia to study physics, and how what I decided to do to present to you is actually to bring the information that we have, the teachings that we have in some of the Spiritist books, Genesis and the Spiritist book mainly, and also bring some knowledge from our earthly sciences, just to see where we are, trying to set a kind of a framework where people can build slowly the ideas and understand the information that we are constantly receiving from spirits, from benefactors, and hoping that these ideas will guide us into the development of our world, not only physically speaking, but also in terms of moral development and so on. So what I'll show to you are, the information that I collected with some thoughts, my own thoughts, and I hope you enjoy it. Shall we start then? Let me share my screen.
Adrian? We can see your screen, Munir.
Yeah, I'll try again. Yeah.
But it's there. What's there?
Oh, you can see?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Right, so the universal cosmic fluids. It's a very broad, very challenging topic. And my main idea here is to present some of the main aspects of it and invite people to study a bit more. So when you talk about the universal cosmic fluid, we talk about one of the two most important elements in creation. God is the creator of everything. And in the creation, we are going to find the intelligent principle. The intelligent principle is the principle where we as spirits come from. And the other element is the universal cosmic fluid. And the universal cosmic fluid is basically everything else apart from God and apart from this intelligent principle where the spirits come from. We see that this spiritual principle, it evolves from its original source. So it slowly progresses in different realms in nature until we get to the point of individualization. And this is still a mystery for us. We haven't got much information from spirit regarding this process, but we know that at a certain point, after undergoing a progress through the different realms in nature, spirits get individualized. And then as individuals, we begin to progress. I use here the image of sparks that slowly evolve towards what we call perfection, enlightenment. We call this spark soul. Kardec was very clear in his book, What is Spiritism? We generally talk about spirit when we see this spark enveloped in its subtle body. And the spark itself is called by Kardec a soul, and the spirit is the spark surrounded by this fluidic body. But because we don't see the spark alone, it's always surrounded by this fluidic body, less or more etherealized, but still there. We talk about spirit in general terms. So we mention our spirit as this spark surrounded by this ethereal body. And we see that it interacts all the time since its beginning. The spirit interacts with the universal cosmic fluids in its different byproducts, in its different levels. The universal cosmic fluid, in its simplest form, is everywhere. This fluid composes everything that we know, as I said before, but God and the spirit. And it undergoes transformations. It's very etherealized in its original form, but then it's transformed in different fluids, which can be as dense as matter that we know in this world, dense or tangible matter, and it can have different densities, as we are going to see. I'll go into detail later on, just to show the idea of the two main elements in creation, the spirit and the universal cosmic fluid, where everything else comes from. So just briefly talking about the intelligent principle, which is not the aim here, but just to clarify it before we move on, the intelligent principle is where the spirit comes from. So we have this question from the Spiritist book, part 1, question 23. What is the spirit? The intelligent principle of the universe. This is a very simple question given by spirit. And it's interesting that when this individualization occurs, then we become one entity. And this one entity, each one of us will then remain like that, with the difference that we will slowly progress. Before that, we were in nature, but we were undergoing different experiences, different conditions. We can say that we were individualized. So the spirit does not receive divine illumination which gives it, along with free will. This is one characteristic of this individualization. We get free will and we get consciousness. Also the awareness of our higher destiny. This is something that we haven't before being individualized as spirits, as souls. And then after that moment, I say moment, but it may last for a period, we don't know. So without having passed through the diversity of unavoidable series of lower beings, among which the labor of each individualization is slowly worked out. This is very important. So it's something that happens not over a year, a period of 10 years, a century. It happens through billions of years. And the universal cosmic fluid, which is actually the subject of our talk today. We see in Genesis chapter 6, item 10. There is an ethereal fluid that fills space and penetrates all bodies. This fluid is the ether, or primitive cosmic matter, the generator of the universe and beings. So everything else, apart from the spirit we just saw, comes from the universal cosmic fluid. Is actually a transformation of the universal cosmic fluid. The diversity that we see in our world with our physical eyes, and the diversity that we see in the spirit world with our spiritual eyes, as it were, all come from these universal cosmic fluids. So the starting point of the universal cosmic fluid is a degree of absolute purity, of which nothing can give us an idea. So we haven't got to the point in intellectual terms as collectively speaking to understand what is the universal cosmic fluid in its purest state, original state. But we can see it from the bottom upwards, because we are in a dense, tangible world. We know something already from our sciences, and we also have a great deal of information from spirits. And they say to us that the opposite point to this high degree of purity is the transformation into tangible matter. So this matter that we see here in our physical world with our physical eyes, and also a great deal of this matter that we don't see with our physical eyes, but with our instruments. And in between these two extremes, we have countless transformations. They are more or less, I say, closer or more distance from one extreme or the other. So there is a huge transformation of this fluid into a variety of different byproducts. Everything comes from the universal cosmic fluid, but we will find this fluid in the universe transformed into all sorts of ethereal matter. It's still matter because it comes from the universal cosmic fluid. So we are using matter here in a very general sense, comprising subtle or ethereal matter and dense and tangible matter. I use these adjectives, these words, to differentiate one from the other, but it's all matter. And the intermediate point is the transformation of the fluid into tangible matter. But even then, there is no sudden transformation. So to draw a line and say, you know, from this line upwards is subtle, from this line downwards it's tangible. It doesn't happen that way. Actually, you have a region of transition. The fluid becomes denser and denser and denser and denser to a point where it's highly dense. And we know that in our world, we have very light, very subtle material. We have something like the air is matter, but it's very light. It's very flexible. And we have like a bar of lead. It's very dense. It's something that's completely different, but it's still matter, and it's still tangible matter. And from this subtle ethereal matter, we have two byproducts. that are very important to what we are going to discuss today. One of them is the perispirit, because the perispirit is composed by fluids, not directly from the original universal cosmic fluid in its purest state, but from the fluids available in a certain region where that spirit finds him or herself. So the spirit will draw from those fluids the fluid, the matter that will compose its perispirit. And the vital fluid is also very important. It's not tangible. It's in the subtle or ethereal type of matter, but it's very important to give life to living beings in the physical world, in the dense and tangible world. So life is possible in our physical world because we have a combination of the dense matter with the vital fluid. And we'll see when there's the conditions necessary for this to take place, to happen. So from Genesis as well as chapter 6, inherent to this ether are the forces that preside over the metamorphosis of matter, the immutable and necessary laws that govern the universe. It's mentioned here forces. All the forces in the universe, they are attributes of these universal cosmic fluids. They are there. They only take place when the right conditions are met. In the physical world, we know some of these forces, gravity, for instance. We know the magnetic forces, we know the nuclear forces. All these forces are forces that come from these original raw material, as it were, the universal cosmic fluid. They come from the fluid's properties, but they are not always present because it's necessary that the conditions are right for these forces to take place. And this constant change, this variety of fluids and everything else that comes from the universal cosmic fluid, they are the result of the action of these forces. These multiple forms indefinitely varied according to the combinations of matter, localized according to masses, and diversified in their modes of action, depending on the circumstances and conditions, are known on Earth as gravity, cohesion, affinity, attraction, magnetism, and electricity. So from a physicist's point of view, these are the forces that we have here. And they are the ones responsible for the interaction from the atom to molecules to tissues to organs. We see that all these forces are the ones responsible for these all these conditions, the situations that we see. And they all come from this fluid. So the universal cosmic fluid that fills the universe, rarefied to various degrees. So as we said before, it can be highly pure, highly rarefied, or it can be dense. But it has several degrees. In the immense regions, rich in clusters of stars, condensed to various degrees where the stellar sky does not yet shine, modified to various degrees by different combinations according to their locations in the expanse, is nothing more than the primitive substance in which reside the universal forces, from which nature has taken all things. So again, this we find in chapter 6, item 19 of Genesis. And we see it's very interesting, calling the attention to the fact that this was written in the second half of the 19th century, and it's still up to date. We can see now with our astronomy and cosmology studies that little by little this become true. So that's why I said that it's important for us to get this information and bear them in mind, so that slowly we build this in our minds and begin to understand a bit more of what the spirits brought to us during that time. This is a picture just to give us an idea, how is it possible for the fluid in different states to be all together. Here we have water in different states. We have the clouds, we have water vapor in the atmosphere. We have droplets of liquid water in the atmosphere. We have ice in the iceberg. We have liquid water. It's all there. So what we see is that from the same molecules, water, we can derive so many different products, as it were. We have it liquid with certain properties, solid with different properties. We have in the form of vapor, also different forms. I also like to mention the example of carbon. Carbon, if you arrange the molecules like layers, one on top of the other, you have graphite. If you arrange the atoms in a different way, like a crystal in a three-dimensional form, you have diamonds. And they have different properties, completely different properties. Just to show an example of what was said before, that the forces are all there. It's just that when we change the conditions, this force will manifest themselves differently. The creation of our universe, the creation of this physical universe, which is dated back to 13.8 billion years. Our current theory is that it started with a Big Bang. From a tiny point, everything started. And what we see is the evolution from that point, 13.8 billion years ago, to our present day. We have this transformation, constant transformation of matter. And in here, we not only have the dense, the tangible matter that we studied in our universities, but we also have the cosmic fluids with its different fluids and all sorts of byproducts that are derived from the original fluid. And they all come from the universal cosmic fluids. So like the picture with the ice, the iceberg and water, and despite the fact of having an iceberg there, we also have liquid water, we also have vapor. So it's the same in our universe. We have this condensation, highly condensed universal cosmic fluids, which is dense and tangible matter. But we also have the cosmic fluid in its subtle and ethereal matter with a highly varied forms. The same in our planet. We see it took 5 billion years for our planet to get to the point where it is now. So in this process of evolution, we see that there is something in this original matter. It started with dust. Then the universe started with dust. And then from that dust, it began to undergo transformation. And where were these forces that promoted this transformation? They were already there. They are already in this universal fluid. And we got to a point where we have a variety of minerals, vegetables, animals, and we human beings. We are at the top of this process of evolution on our planet. We are now equipped with a machine, electric machine, our brains, which are capable to provide our spirits with a certain degree of freedom to manifest ourselves in this world. So all this occurred over a time span of 5 billion years. We see that nature undergoes constant transformation, but it happens overnight. It takes a lot of time. So it's a very elaborate process. So in looking at science and Spiritism, it's very interesting because in chapter 14, item 2 from Genesis, we see that it's differentiated what it's the subject of study of our sciences, material sciences, and what is the subject of Spiritism. So we have the material phenomena, that is the responsibility of science, and the spirit or psychic, which is the responsibility of Spiritism. At this point, we can say that with Spiritism, we can explain all the material phenomena, and vice versa. So at this point, there's no purpose in trying to use one to explain the other and the other way around. But it's interesting that spiritual life and bodily life are in constant contact. Often the phenomena of these two categories occur simultaneously. We know that we are spirits, we have our perispirit, which is not composed by dense matter, and we have our physical body. So we are living proof of these contacts of the two realms, I would say, the spiritual life and the bodily life. So we can say that for us as spirits, we now have our physical sciences, material science, to explain what is the realm of material world, material life, and we have our spiritual science, which is Spiritism, to explain the spiritual or psychic phenomena. Just looking at the idea of ether, because ether was mentioned at the very beginning. It's mentioned several times in Genesis. And during Kardec's time, the idea of ether was slightly different from the one that we have today and the one that they had in ancient and medieval times. In ancient and medieval times, they believed that above the sky, the universe was composed by this, they called quintessence, a material that fills the region of the universe above terrestrial sphere. In modern and contemporary age, this idea of ether was accepted until the theory of relativity proposed by Einstein in late 19th century, early 20th century. And some people say that Einstein denied the existence of this ether. The ether was used to explain how gravity and light would propagate in space. And then Einstein, when he proposed his theory of relativity, he didn't need to use this ether to explain it. But he didn't prove that it doesn't exist. It's very interesting, this point. So it changed a little bit, the perception of this ether changed a little bit to our modern science. For instance, Kardec, all the times we see in the Spiritist books, talking about fluids. And nowadays, fluid is seen as a material substance, such as gases and liquids, indicating the possibility of relative internal movement. Flexible materials that flow, that move. Some parts move, whereas some parts are moving slightly different. And we know that from the experience we've seen already so many times, dense materials are flowing. So this is the idea of fluid. But at Kardec's time, and from what we see, especially from Genesis, he probably meant something much broader, something that we would call nowadays like fields, for instance. But it's not explicitly said there. The ideas of fields, like gravitational fields, electromagnetic field is a sort of a later concept. And the idea of space and time. Nowadays, we have the theory of relativity, where time also varies. Before it was just a space. When we move, our coordinates are moving, but time flows in a constant way. With the theory of relativity, time doesn't flow the same way for different conditions. We also have the fixed bottom scenario from particles physics. We have particles like the photons, which is this drops of energy, which have no mass, but they carry some amount of energy. And the background scenario is called it's called, sorry, space-time background for particle physics. And you also have the string theory. In this theory, there are several dimensions, 10 dimensions. And from these 10 dimensions, we only see 4. These 4 dimensions are space, 3-dimensional space plus time. This is just some idea. They are quite complex if we want to study in details, each one of them. It's just to show us an idea of this process that science is undergoing, acquiring some knowledge through research and through a scientific methodology. We see also the idea of matter. For the Greeks, matter was composed by tiny solid blocks. And then over 2,000 years later, for Dalton, the atom, the unities that composed matter, were like solid balls. And slowly this concept was transformed through research. Then came the idea of the sphere composed by positive charges, surrounded, encrusted with negative charges, and then moved towards the model of atom that we are more familiar with, which has particles, neutral particles, positive particles, all packed in the nucleus, and the negative particles are moving around this nucleus. And later on, the conditions for this to happen were more detailed with quantum physics. And nowadays, this idea of solid particles is basically vanishing. We see now the electron and the particles as energy condensed, and this condensation is moving around, to the point that we see here a drop of water. We see the water molecules, and then the molecules composed by atoms, and now the charges, positive, negative, electrons, protons, and the chargeless particle, neutron. They are now seen as composed by smaller particles. This is the particle physics. And these new particles, they are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, and mass is becoming smaller, smaller, and smaller. So the idea of this compact, dense universe is little by little giving way to an idea of condensation of energy and exchange of energy between these not so dense particles. So basically, this is the scenario that we have nowadays in particle physics. And the periodic table showing the amount, here we have 118, basically 113, 14 are natural elements, and the rest are artificial elements. But basically, these are the building blocks on a larger scale. We've seen in a smaller scale with the particle physics, and now we have in a larger scales the composition that all materials that we have in our planet here, they come from a combination of one or more of these elements. So these are the building blocks. Everything that we find here in terms of dense matter, they come from a combination. And looking the other way into what makes, which are the building blocks of each one of these atoms here, we see that there are smaller and smaller particles. And I ask myself, what is coming next? Just to show that we also have the electromagnetic wave, which was actually explained through equations by Maxwell, more or less during Kardec's time, during that period, second half of 19th century. When with quantum physics, what was wave became small condensation of energy. No mass, small particles with no mass and a certain amount of energy. So all this is what make up of our physical world. And then the first of the byproducts that I said, if I can use this term, from the denser fluids that we have that are not tangible, is the perispirit. The perispirit is very important. I'll just mention very briefly here, because we could have not one, but several talks regarding the perispirit, its importance, its properties, and so on. But it's important to mention because the perispirit, being a byproduct or being composed by fluids that come from the universal cosmic fluid, it is one of the very important byproducts or creations, as it were, from the universal cosmic fluid. It is a fluidic body of spirits. So we could imagine the spirit, this spark, as a magnet bar, a bar magnet, sorry. A bar magnet with its fields around. Whenever you have ion shards around it, it will affect these particles, these ion shards. And then we'll see the form of the magnetic fields around this bar magnet. It's more or less what happens. It's a very gross comparison, but it helps us to visualize what happens. This fluidic body, it's like this material, this substance enveloping the spirit. The spirit irradiates thoughts. And around this would be the magnetic field, as it were. And then around it, we have then the perispirit enveloping this spark. And this envelope would be these ion shards that surround these bar magnet. Is one of the most important products of the cosmic fluid. It's a condensation of that fluid around a focal point of intelligence or soul. It's the spark, the spirit, the source of intelligence that comes from the intelligent principle. So the spirits extract the perispirit. This is very important. They extract the perispirit from the environment in which they find themselves, which means that this envelope is formed from environmental fluids. If I live on Earth, my perispirit will be composed by fluids that compose this fluidic atmosphere of Earth. If I move to another planet, Jupiter, for instance, I'll draw my perispirit, I'll be enveloped by fluids that are fluids from the fluidic atmosphere of this new planet of Jupiter. The nature of the fluidic envelope always has to do with the spirit's degree of moral advancement. So the perispirit is not the same for each and every one. We have our mental process, because we are intelligent beings. We have our mental process, and this mental process will attract certain types of fluids in the atmosphere where we are, and then we will compose our envelope, our perispirit. That's why we have, although we are all here on Earth, for instance, we have different composition in our perispirit. The higher the level of the spirit, the more ethereal is the material that composes the perispirit, always in accordance to the atmosphere where the spirit is. And it has several properties and also can be studied in details. We won't do it here. Plasticity, density, visibility, luminosity, penetrability, sensitivity, expandability. For instance, sensitivity. We, through our physical body, we have 5 senses. And we use these 5 senses to interact with the surrounding. We see, we hear, we smell, we feel on our skin if something touches us. If we eat something, we feel the taste. But for the spirits, this sensitivity comes from the whole perispirit. There isn't one specialized organ to do that. That's why a sensitivity in the physical world or in the perispirit is more accurate than sensitivity in our physical body. So the incarnate being, we have the spirit, we have the spark, which is the result of this evolution from the intelligent principle. We have the perispirit that is drawn from the atmosphere, the fluidic atmosphere of the planet where this being is. So it's drawn, the perispirit, according to the level of the spirit, of course. It envelops itself with these fluids that are typical from this planet. And obviously from the material, dense material that compose the planet, we draw through the process of pregnancy, we draw the elements, physical elements that will compose our physical body. And the recipe for that, which is in our DNA in the physical level, but has also to do with our perispirit, this process here on Earth took 5 billion years to happen. So it was not a recipe that came ready-made. It's not a recipe that appeared overnight. It took 5 billion years in terms of evolution, just on the physical level, for the physical body to be as it is, for our DNA to record the information on the physical level of how to build a physical body from the elements of the planet. And then we have the 2 situations. Incarnate, we have physical body, perispirit, and the spirit. And once we leave the physical body disintegrates, returns to the planet, as it were, to compose other beings. And here we are, the spirit with its envelope. In the spiritual level, we talked about the fluids of the planet. This would be the spiritual fluids. The fluids that compose the fluidic atmosphere of a planet. I'm not talking about the air, the atmosphere. It's the fluidic atmosphere of this planet. These are spiritual fluids. And the spirits, they act upon the spiritual fluids with the help of thought and will. Thought directs the process, and the will gives it the power. So thought and will are for spirits what hands are to humans. And it's quite interesting. As I said the other day, that we do the same on a physical level, because if we want to do something, we first think. Then with our willpower, we'll go and move our hands and work towards achieving, materializing, as it were, our thoughts. by means of thought, they impress upon the fluids this or that direction. So they direct here and there where these fluids are going. They agglomerate, combine, disperse them. They form them in ensembles, gather them, having a single appearance, shape, and certain coloration. Basically, it's like a laboratory where they make according to the thoughts and will. And I'll make a comment here. Thought and will to manipulate at a higher level the fluids. I mean, having the domain, being capable of doing it, is not for just every spirit. We have to be highly trained, as it were, on how to do it, to have a very firm thought, to have powerful will, to be able to do that with the fluids in a controlled manner. That's why we see in the Spiritist literature, the spirits that return to the spirit world, and some of them can't even go through a door, a wall, and they have no idea of their capabilities. And some of them, or most of them, will have to be trained, as it were, to have this control. The same we do here on Earth. We have to be trained to operate a machine. We have to be trained to work with wood, for instance, to be able to do something properly. Sometimes these transformations are the result of intent. So I'm talking about the spirits who can do things with intent. But frequently, however, they are the product of an unconscious thought. We are thinking all the time. Thought is the force that transforms the fluids. But we need thoughts and will. And sometimes we are not aware that we are transforming these fluids around us because we are thinking, and sometimes we think very intensely, and we wish something very much. And with this, we transform the fluids, but we are not aware of that. And as it's said here, this situation is very frequent. They are the product of an unconscious thought. So we all do that all the time because we are always thinking. Sometimes with less power, sometimes in a very powerful way. We put our mind into something and we think, and with all sorts of feelings, sometimes good feelings, sometimes bad feelings. And that is very important because fluids in themselves, they are not good or bad. They're just fluids. What I do with them is what gives them this property. If I have a very good thought and feeling and powerful will to transform a fluid, it's going to be a good fluid. But if I transform this fluid with very negative feelings, for instance, of revenge or envy or all sorts of negative feelings, then the fluids will acquire that property. Because we imprint in the fluids what we think and what we wish. And it's said here, and this is from Genesis, since these fluids are the vehicle for thoughts which can modify the properties, it is obvious that they must be impregnated with the good or evil qualities of the thoughts that set them in motion. And they change according to the purity or impurity of sentiments. As the fluids act upon the perispirit, it in turn reacts upon the physical organism, with which it is in molecular contact. So the perispirit and the spirit, they have a contact on molecular level. The perispirit is very flexible to thought. The body isn't. So if we think of something that will change some property in our perispirit, and the perispirit will transmit that to the physical body. But the physical body is very resistant. It's very resistant. But with time, if we insist on that, we keep on that, slowly we begin to change our physical body to be in conformance with the change that has occurred in our perispirit. And if it's positive, it can bring us some relief, some cure, maybe some good transformation in our physical body. If it's not, if it's negative, which unfortunately at our levels most of the time, that slowly will actually make some real change in our physical body. And that's when some diseases appear. And finally, the vital principle. The vital principle is a byproduct of the universal cosmic fluids. This vital principle is the one, as I said before, responsible for giving life to physical beings, physical bodies. We take this from the Spiritist book, question 61. Is there any difference between the matter of organic and inorganic bodies? Just to remind you, organic and inorganic, we've learned at school. So organic is composed by carbon, a lot of carbon composing the organic beings. And inorganic, they are less dependent on carbon, a combination of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen to be formed. But the answer from Spirit is, it is always the same matter, but in organic bodies, it is animalized. What is the cause of the animalization of matter? Its union with the vital principle. This is very important. Then moving on, thus this vital principle resides within some particular agent, or is it merely a property of organized matter? In other words, is it a cause or an effect? The vital principle is the cause of life, or life is the cause of vital principle? It is both. Life is an effect produced by the action of these agents upon matter. However, without matter, the agent is not life, just as matter cannot be alive without the agent. It gives life to all beings that absorb and assimilate it. This is very interesting because the vital principle, we could imagine that the vital principle is a byproduct of universal cosmic fluid, and it's available around us. But it's inactive because it needs the right organic conditions, organic body, organic entity, we could call, to start to act. If I have a battery, right? But I don't have, for instance, an electric engine, I can make movements. Just the battery is not enough to make movements. When I connect this battery to this electric engine, it gives life, as it were, to the electric engine. The same way, petrol. I have an engine, I have petrol. Petrol can give life, as it were, to the engine. But petrol in itself is not life. But the difference from these two examples I just gave is that when the body is in movement, is the movement of body that makes it absorb more and more energy. So if I don't have the right organic conditions to absorb and recycle this vital fluid that it's inactive around me, it won't give me life. The physical body, the organic beings, not just our body, vegetables, animals, when the life, as it were, began on our planet, it was because those organic beings started to be able to absorb the fluid, the vital fluid that was around them, available to them, and keep that on movement. As I draw that fluid, I'm capable of drawing the fluid to myself. I'm also capable, this movement will make the fluid come and go, come and go. I usually say it's like the battery in the car. We start the engine, the battery will give life to the car, and the movement of the car will make the battery recharge. And the battery charge will give life to the car, and then if I switch on the engine, but I don't recharge, the alternator is not, which is the part of the car responsible for transforming the movement of the engine into electricity to recharge the battery. If the alternator is not working, I'll waste all that energy, I'll draw the energy from the battery, and one more moment will end, and that's it. So I have to recharge this battery, and to make this battery recharge, I have to move the engine, move the alternator. It's the same with us. The activity of the vital principle is maintained during life by the activity of the organs. When this action ceases because of death, the vital principle is extinguished. When something very, very traumatic in our body takes place, it's so traumatic that it's irreversible. Our body no longer has this capability of keeping the fluid moving around. We no longer meet the conditions for this to happen. So we don't draw anymore the vital fluid. We don't activate this fluid. We don't generate life anymore. That's what we call death. Sometimes we have a lesion in one organ or something, but it's not enough to end this process. It changes for a while. We feel depleted. But during that period, our body recovers. And then we regain, perhaps not at the same level as before. It depends on the level of the damage. But we are capable of keeping life. But once the damage is too big, then the extension of this damage is too high, then we no longer can keep this process of absorbing, activating, moving around with what we call life, and carrying on this process. In the combination of elements to form organic bodies, electricity is produced. Electricity in inverted commas. Organic bodies would thus be veritable electric batteries, which function as long as the components of these batteries can sustain the conditions required to produce electricity, that is life, and which stop when such conditions cease, that is death. This is found in chapter 10, item 19 of Genesis. So they say that the organs as a whole, they compose a sort of mechanism. So for a car to be working, all parts have to be, especially the important parts, they have to be working. For a watch to work, all parts have to be working. It's the same with our body. When all parts of our body are working, we absorb, activate this vital fluid. Otherwise, this process of life won't take place. The amount of vital fluid is not the same in all organic beings. It varies from one organic being to another. It varies from one period for the same organic beings. It varies from species. For one individual is not the same today and it won't be the same next week, or it depends very much. We know that the way we lead our lives will either help or make it more difficult in terms of keeping our batteries in sound conditions to recharge fully and keep on this process of recharging fully all the time. And the amount of vital fluid may become depleted and insufficient for maintaining life if it's not renewed by absorbing or assimilating substances that contain it. Our environments, from foods to air, all our environments is capable of providing us inactive vital fluid, and this inactive vital fluid can be used to increase our amounts of vitality. And the vital fluids, the last one, and which is very important, can be transmitted from one individual to another. Those who have greater, sometimes even unconsciously, some who have greater quantities of it can give it to those who have less. As I said, it can be a process, spontaneous or not. So basically, these were the main points I would like to call your attention to. Just the gathering of some information, some ideas that hopefully will encourage people to study, especially the Spiritist book and Genesis regarding to these aspects of the universal cosmic fluids. Thank you so much.
But if some people want to do some questions, I think we have not much time now because we already are 12 o'clock. We can do our final prayer. And if some people want to speak with you and make some questions, and you can stay at this meeting. Sure. It's okay for everybody? It's okay? Where is Leo? It's okay? Okay. So, Leo, would you like to do the final prayer, only to close this prayer? No. Okay. Adriano, can you close the prayer?
Sorry, Elsa, close the recording?
No, the recording can carry on. So we close the meeting as 12, as meeting. So people will be free to stay or go. If everybody wants to stay, we can close later. I don't know, because I can't see all the people here. I can see if they are okay or not. The chat, for example.
Okay, it's okay. Carry on, Elsa.
Okay, so we can only say to dear Master Jesus that we are so happy to have this opportunity. This is a great academic lesson. There is a guideline for us to understand in academic way the importance to talk about these kind of things in this level that the other scientists can see, can listen this lesson, because it's this class on YouTube later on, and we can send it to our friends. That will be the good help to a lot of people in English language. Thank you so much, Munir, for this beautiful part, first part. And now, if people stay, we can do some questions. If everybody agree? You know, we have no people like that. We have people like that in a horizontal way. Janet, you are in mute, my dear. You can unmute yourself. If you want to do questions.
Yes, I wanted to make a tiny little comment, because where you finished the talk, Munir, in other words, that is our healing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we can see quite clearly for people to understand that all the kingdoms, the vegetable, the animal, and the human, we can give healing on all of these kingdoms.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have, in the healing process, I mean, we have our own fluids and we have fluids from spirits. They direct their fluids. They use us as instruments, but they can even direct their fluids without our help, our aid. But we have our own, because we have our physical body, and it's not just body, spirit, and perispirit. There are other types of energy. We have a double, we have a mental body, but I didn't go into detail. And in this process, we have a lot of fluids, not just vital fluids. We have even fluids which are very close to our material body, which are not vital fluids, and they use this. But we can also use our fluids, our own fluids, as Janet said, to give healing, as it were, even to the vegetable kingdom.
Yeah.
We know that some people, they have so much energy that can make seeds germinate on their hands. They are very good with plants and flowers, and whatever they touch, they say that it's a good hand for gardening. Whatever they do in the garden, it seems to, to be marvelous.
I've always been successful with my gardening.
Yeah.
Munir, I want to ask you,
I said, yeah, sure. Yeah,
just following up on what Janet is saying there, what science has been able to prove concerning that, the power that we have to change matter around us, and healing and water and plants and all that?
Yeah, there are some research, but because in academia, this research is very slow, it has to follow a certain methodology. So I would say there are some studies, especially regarding this power. I know that, some people have done some very interesting studies about these seeds. I've seen an article.
Munir? I think we lost Munir.
Rose, yeah, I think you come back.
Sometimes he doesn't know that he is freezing.
This is a very fascinating topic, isn't it?
Exactly.
Very difficult sometimes to understand, and most studies we do, we don't get much involved with that, do we? I mean, we don't touch much on the fluid. We talk about many other things. It's very interesting the way he explained it.
I've noticed of recent times how they are making new kinds of dogs. Just as one example. And I've been giving it a little bit of thought, wondering how they can do it. I mean, I wonder why they do it. I don't see any point in it, because I can't see that they've done anything very special or beautiful with the dogs so far, but I couldn't read. But this has given me lots of clues of thought to be able to understand a bit better. And I've not heard any talk about the vital fluids and all this sort of thing just like this. I think this lecture was absolutely fantastic.
He's coming again, trying to enter again. Janet, it's nice because Charlie gave a talk in English as well last week to SSL. Was amazing talk about the Spiritism. And Munir today. We needed to study. Our group is beautiful because we study every week. Oh, Munir, come back again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My computer got stuck. So I'm using now the mobile phone.
Great.
Well, everybody
Yeah.
found your talk quite fascinating and very important, Munir.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much. It's a very interesting subject, and it's far from, being all that there is. It's amazing now rereading Genesis to prepare the talk and so on. It seems to be a new book.
Yeah.
Because we have new ideas, we've evolved from our previous ideas. We've, our brain is constantly elaborating new thoughts and
Absolutely.
and it's marvelous, Janet. It's fantastic. I see, oh, how come I hadn't seen it this way before?
Yes, yeah, we don't realize once we've got a little bit of knowledge, we think, oh, that's fantastic, now I know. And we forget that we never stop knowing. Knowledge is always growing, increasing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if Leo, because he made a before you start. I don't know.
No, it's okay. This before, I mean, because I want other people to ask. There's one doubt I had because I heard in different places and I read, why do we reincarnate? Why do we have to reincarnate with a body? I read that the whatever harm is done to the perispirit, to our spiritual body, that is psychological, that is that has to, we have to come to a more dense matter to deal with that. Maybe you can explain. That's a doubt I always had.
Yeah. No, I would give you two different explanations. On the moral level, to evolve morally, we need to be in contact with all sorts of people under the conditions that we meet in the material world. We have situations here, we meet people here that we wouldn't meet in the spiritual level, because we go to a place, in general, we go to a place where the spirits there are at a certain level. So certain types of behavior, thoughts, we wouldn't meet in this place. And this would be, I would say, the reason why it's faster for us to evolve when we are here, or to test ourselves, as it were, when we are in the physical world, because we are in contact with different people at different levels and in different circumstances. From the physical point of view, the physical body is, as I said before, it is more resistant to change, especially subtle changes. And the spirit needs that to be able to overcome certain scars in its perispirit. We see that in some cases, especially suicide, sometimes the only alternative to speed up the process is to make the spirit undergo a very brief reincarnation, just to be in contact with the physical body and then return to spirit. And I think the level that we need a physical incarnation also, because we put ourselves in situations, we create situations for ourselves that sometimes matter is the best way to cure us, overcome, exactly because it's more resistant. It also provides us the level of fluids that we need. We know cases where the spirit is so, the impact on the perispirit is so high that the spirit has to be in contact with matter. It's like a mold, a very hard mold, where you put the substance in there, and because it's hard, it's capable of keeping the shape of that substance. You know, it's more like clear the analogy. When we evolve, when we get to a point where we don't cause this level of damage to our perispirits, then we won't need this kind of remedy.
Yeah, no, very clear.
Munir, can I ask you a question?
Oh, sure, Janet.
I have lots of thoughts linked with our present virus that, in my opinion, is very spiritually based. And what is your opinion? I believe that it has come to help people who've been almost like stagnant in their incarnations, to take them back to the spiritual world, to shake them up, to show them that they're not making any progress, as it were.
Yeah, I remember that once in one of I can't remember, in one of Andrea Luiz's book, he talks about the miasms, the condensation of certain types of fluids that actually promotes the transformation in a material level. So we have new viruses, and according to what we just talked, our thoughts manipulate the fluids, and these fluids, they have an impact. And we as a whole, I believe, we are responsible. Even on the physical level, we are also responsible, because we think we are the intelligent beings.
Yeah.
We are capable of moving matter forward, but sometimes we're not in a straight line. We have to go sideways and create all sorts of difficulties for ourselves before giving a step forward. And I think this virus, just like many others in the past, we are interfering in the material world constantly, because we are thinking constantly. And if we think negatively, we create this negative impact. And I believe that it's a natural result. We create something because we are still in the level of creating something negative. We have the answer that will bring us the cure.
Yeah.
If I put my finger on something that is very hot, it's going to burn. There wasn't someone that went there and did that on purpose. No, it's the reaction of what my action did. I put my finger. So if I think negatively, as we as humanity think negatively, we create the fluids that will give impulse to matter in a certain direction of transformation. So the virus will have the impact, moral impact, I would say.
Yes.
Impact in our lives that will actually try to deviate us from this thought line, if you know what has created this.
And the positive ideas,
Yeah.
productive,
Munir, it's so nice to listen to you, but I think you have time for one more question that we have to finish, because we have to stop recording as well. And okay. I think 12:30 will be the last bye-bye.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Can I just make a teeny comment that for everybody, let us all try to be much more positive in our thoughts. Remember that we are incarnate in order to progress.
Exactly. Thank you, Janet. It's a good reminder. We have the hands of light. We have the green fingers. We can heal the world praying together. We can heal our plants, animals. We can heal ourselves by thoughts, using these beautiful tools that we have. Yeah? Munir, thank you very much, Munir.
My pleasure, Elsa.
So Adriano, that is here now, he is coordinating our studies, because Tatiana is totally immersed in her university now course. Okay. We give have 3 years only. But Adriano is helping a lot, and he organized our videos to YouTube as well. So we make sure that everyone will be with the link to spread this beautiful, amazing lesson today.
I hope it's profitable to each one, you know, in spiritual terms. Yeah.
So Leo gave with this idea that once time that we can have, and that is great. So now Leo gave before a very nice one. I think 3 months ago, no, Leo, 2 months ago, I can remember, but it was good. So time to time we will do that.
Yeah.
Perhaps we will invite you again.
Okay, I'll prepare something. And it's nice to see Janet back again. Very good. Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. So my dear people,
See you next week. Yeah.
yeah, if you don't have any more questions, we can finish and have our nice lunch. Munir can have a nice coffee there.
Yeah, we'll have a coffee break here.
Okay. Bye, Emmanuel. I was thinking that it was another person because you are Emmanuel. It's missing.
Oh yeah,
Emmanuel.
no worries, it's fine.
Yeah, it is okay. Okay, my dear people.
Okay.
Bye, Trinity. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank